I never thought I'd become the target of our notorious HOA president, but here we are. Karen Wilkins had ruled over Sunnyside Estates with an iron fist for nearly 5 years. A woman in her mid-50s with a perpetually pursed mouth and that signature blonde bob haircut with chunky highlights, she seemed to live for the power that came with her position. Most neighbors either feared her or avoided her entirely. I, unfortunately, had become her newest obsession. It started 3 months ago when I planted native wildflowers in my front yard to replace the water-guzzling lawn. Despite getting proper approval from the architectural committee and following all guidelines, Karen took personal offense. "Those weeds are bringing down property values," she insisted during my first confrontation with her, her voice dripping with disdain as she stood at my doorstep with her clipboard clutched to her chest. I calmly showed her the approval documentation, which only seemed to irritate her more. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the paperwork, and I could almost see the gears turning in her head, looking for any technicality to cite. "Well, we'll just see about this," she had said with a tight smile before turning on her heel. That was my first warning that I'd entered her radar, but I had no idea how far she would eventually go. Over the following weeks, I received 4 separate violation notices for increasingly ridiculous infractions. My garbage can remain visible for excessive time after collection, by which she meant 45 minutes. My garden hose wasn't properly stowed when I took a 10-minute break from watering. The welcome mat on my front porch was not from the approved color palette. Each time, I responded with photographic evidence disproving her claims or showing compliance with actual HOA rules, copying the entire board on my emails. The other board members began to notice this pattern of harassment, and Karen's complaints were increasingly met with skepticism. This only fueled her determination to catch me in some legitimate violation. I could sometimes spot her silver SUV creeping slowly past my house, her silhouette visible as she scrutinized my property for any possible infraction. Neighbors started texting me warnings when they saw her headed my way. It was almost comical, except that it was also genuinely stressful. Last month, I had planned my first real vacation in 2 years, a 10-day trip to visit my sister in Colorado. I made all the necessary arrangements, including hiring Jamie, a graduate student recommended by a colleague, to house sit and take care of my elderly cat, Merlin. I briefed Jamie thoroughly about Karen, half-jokingly at first, but then with increasing seriousness as I explained her escalating behavior. "If she comes to the door, you don't have to engage with her," I explained to Jamie as we sat at my kitchen table the day before my departure. "Just say I'm away and any HOA matters can be addressed when I return." Jamie nodded, pushing her glasses up her nose. "Don't worry. I deal with difficult professors all the time. I can handle an HOA busybody." If only we had known just how far Karen would go. 3 days into my vacation, I was enjoying a peaceful hike in the Rocky Mountains when my phone vibrated with an incoming call from Jamie. Thinking she might have a question about Merlin's medication, I stepped off the trail to answer. "Hey, Jamie, everything okay?" I asked, the sound of my sister's family chatting in the background gradually fading as I moved away from them. "Not exactly," Jamie replied, her voice tense. "I need to tell you what just happened with your HOA president." My stomach immediately tightened. What did Karen do now? "She let herself into your house," Jamie said, her voice quivering slightly with what sounded like a mixture of anger and disbelief. "I was in the backyard reading, and when I came inside, she was standing in your living room, taking photos." I felt my blood run cold, then immediately boil. "She did what? How did she get in?" "She claimed she had a master key as HOA president and had the right to inspect properties if there was suspicion of rule violations," Jamie explained. "She said someone reported water leaking from your house into a neighbor's yard, and she needed to check the source." I knew immediately this was a complete fabrication. First, HOA presidents don't have master keys to residents' homes. That would be insane. Second, my house sat on a slight rise. Water couldn't possibly flow uphill to any neighbor's property. Karen had simply invented a pretext to snoop through my home while she thought it was empty. "Where is she now?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "That's why I'm calling," Jamie replied, a new note of satisfaction entering her voice. When I found her in the living room, I immediately told her she was trespassing and needed to leave. She refused and said as HOA president she had every right to be there. So I called the police. I almost dropped my phone. You called the police on Karen? Of course I did, Jamie said firmly. She broke into the house. The police just left. They took her away in handcuffs after she refused to cooperate and kept insisting she had authority to enter any home in the neighborhood. My sister had walked over by this point and was looking at me with concern. I must have had quite the expression on my face, somewhere between shock, rage, and a bizarre sort of admiration for Jamie's quick thinking. I cut my vacation short by 2 days, much to my sister's understanding disappointment. I needed to deal with this situation in person. When I arrived home, Jamie filled me in on the full details. Karen had apparently used a credit card to jimmy open my side door, a technique she later claimed she saw in a movie and thought would work for emergencies. The responding officers had given her multiple opportunities to leave peacefully, but Karen had launched into a tirade about her authority as HOA president and even attempted to cite imaginary bylaws that supposedly gave her the right to enter homes. The police were not impressed, especially when Jamie showed them my texts explicitly stating that no one should be entering the house besides her. Karen was arrested for breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, and resisting arrest after she tried to physically push past one of the officers to exit through the front door instead of being escorted out in handcuffs. The day after I returned, I received a call from Detective Rodriguez, who had been assigned to the case. She informed me that upon further investigation, they had discovered photographs of the interiors of 3 other homes in the neighborhood on Karen's phone, all taken while the owners were away on vacation or business trips. Karen had apparently been conducting these illegal inspections for months, keeping detailed notes of what she considered violations inside people's homes, alongside personal observations about their belongings and lifestyle choices. This is beyond an HOA matter, Detective Rodriguez explained, her tone professional but clearly disgusted by what they had found. This is a pattern of criminal behavior. We're charging her with multiple counts of breaking and entering, trespassing, and invasion of privacy. Given the number of affected homes and her position of supposed authority, the district attorney is taking this very seriously. I decided to attend Karen's arraignment, partly out of curiosity and partly to see this through to the end. The courtroom was surprisingly packed. Word had spread through the neighborhood, and many residents were present, some of whom I recognized as having received particularly harsh treatment from Karen over the years. When Karen entered in her orange jumpsuit, she looked nothing like the imperious figure who had strutted around our neighborhood with her clipboard. Her carefully highlighted hair was flat and unstyled, and without her usual makeup, she appeared much older and smaller somehow. She kept her eyes down until she spotted me in the gallery. For a brief moment, our gazes locked, and I saw a mixture of defiance and fear in her eyes. The judge set her bail at $50,000, citing the serial nature of her offenses and breach of community trust. As the charges were read, 12 counts of breaking and entering, trespassing, 1 count of resisting arrest, and multiple privacy violations, I could see Karen's shoulders slump further with each additional charge. Her attorney, a harried-looking public defender, looked increasingly grim as the prosecutor detailed how Karen had used her position to intimidate residents while systematically violating their most basic privacy rights. The most satisfying moment came when the judge addressed Karen directly. "Mrs. Wilkins, you appear to have fundamentally misunderstood both the scope of your authority and the basic rights of your neighbors. An HOA president is not above the law, and certainly has no right to enter private residences without explicit permission. You're facing up to 5 years in state prison and fines potentially exceeding $25,000. At these words, Karen's composure finally broke. Her face crumpled, and she let out an audible gasp that echoed through the courtroom. "But I was just enforcing the rules," she protested weakly, her voice barely audible. "The bylaws say—" "The bylaws," the judge interrupted sharply, "do not supersede state law or the Constitution, Mrs. Wilkins. This court suggests you familiarize yourself with both before your trial." As Karen was led away, her eyes wide with a sudden realization of the serious consequences she was facing, I felt no sympathy, only relief that her reign of neighborhood terror had finally come to an end.